you might think you are divorced or widowed, but the government doesn't necessarily agree or know that or register that in terms of bureaucracy. And it's linked to that most ubiquitous of South African problems, delays at home affairs. Wendy, won't you explain what made you want to talk about this today?
It's more lack of communication, because if you think about it, the Department of Home Affairs issues death certificates, right?
Yeah.
But they're not kind of taking it the next step and having the surviving spouse's marital status updated to
automatically
divorced,
widowed. Yeah,
sorry, it's not divorced. I beg your pardon, widowed. And the significance of that is with the winding up of estates, because if your parent dies, your surviving parent dies, and they still Home Affairs has them captured as married. You can't wind up the estate if there's a spouse somewhere that is not presenting themselves. So that can delay. I had a case of somebody in Durban. The mother died in 2022, some 6 years after the father. And in 2024, when they were making inquiries as to what is the hold-up with the winding up of her estate, it emerged it was her marital status. So they applied in 2024, I forget the month. Yeah. And they still don't, it's still not changed.
Oh, no,
and in the other case, you would think that these cross connections and communications between these government departments used to happen. So if you got your final order of divorce from the High Court would update Home Affairs, and your status would automatically be updated from married to divorced. And the significance of that, of course, is apart from something. If you choose to remarry, you obviously can't. On a personal note, I was divorced 5 years ago, and when I heard the story through the widowed story, and I checked my mother. My father died in 2021. She's still captured as married. Sure. She's 86 this year, so we need to sort that out. And we've been to Home Affairs, that queue is not long, so just go and do it. If you are widowed, it's fairly simple. Death certificate, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I'm still technically, according to Home Affairs, I'm still married.
Oh my goodness.
So when I tried to do it quick and simple with my mother, no, I was handed a form. Because there's so much fraud apparently with divorce orders, I had to go to the High Court where my divorce order was granted. I didn't really want to share so much personal information, but it does illustrate the case. Yeah. And get them to fill in this verification form that Home Affairs gave me here in I can't remember what the place I went to, anywhere near Grabo, but not Grabo.
Caledon, maybe?
Caledon,
yes,
thank you. I had citrusdal on my brain. I couldn't get it out. And I was initially told I would have to go in person, so fly to Durban.
No.
But anyway, I found a messenger of the court, and he's done it for me at a price, and it's being couriered down, and then I must go to Home Affairs and get it done.
Present this.
So I've spoken to a few people about this. When the divorce comes up and I say, are you sure you're divorced? Some of them say, no, I better check, and they've checked and they are still married. In some cases, the attorneys, and we're talking the last 5, 6, 7 years, told them, which mine should have, that you have to take this order and go to Home Affairs and
physically present it.
But if you weren't told, as I wasn't, you could be sitting with a problem you didn't realize you had.
I mean, imagine the shock of having your whole second marriage planned and the wedding venue booked and the dress bought, and then finding out a day before that actually technically you are still married to somebody else in the eyes of Home Affairs. I mean, Kim, thank you for sending in this WhatsApp. Kim says Kim works in the legal industry. She helps several different law firms with the administration of deceased estates. And she says getting any sort of copies of documents from them is a nightmare, even though Protection of Personal Information Act doesn't apply to deceased persons. Their estate has the right to ask for these documents and their copies. That's the first hurdle. But this is the more salient thing. She says the issue of incorrect marital status is rife. It takes 3 months to process the application to amend the marital status of a recently deceased spouse to widowed, or supposedly takes 3 months, she says, but it's never done in 3 months. In her experience, it averages roughly 6 to 8 months. Then the process to reissue a death certificate with the correct marital status, that can take another 8 to 9 months.
Oh, my word.
Kim says it is criminal in her view. Now, Teresa asking what I'm sure a lot of others are asking, surely there must be a way to check this without having to go into Home Affairs, because we all know you do absolutely anything to avoid going into the branch.
This is the other thing.
Yeah.
Home Affairs used to have an SMS service. So you would SMS your ID number and then M or something to query marital status to a short number, and it would immediately tell you what your status is. They've stopped that because of POPI concerns, protection of, I suppose anyone could do it if they had your ID number. So yes, you can go in. You can pay one of these agencies that helps with documents. It's a hefty fee, I think, and you can find out that way. But I will say that the marital status queues are not as long in your average Home Affairs office department. What's the word?
Branch
as applying for a smart card and passport and all of that.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to say, and it's very important in fairness, is that there is some light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes. And
that is, I did query this with Home Affairs, obviously, and that is that Home Affairs has, I forget the wording, but one of their major impetuses, major projects for 2026 is the focus on going digital. So it's going to be called digital identity, and we're going to have an app, and we're going to be verified biometrically. And then when we get divorced or widowed, we can upload our sort of verified documents onto that. They will check them, and the status will be changed, and we can check on our status at any time, so that we will own that. A lot of people saying, oh, well, that's going to be abused and Big Brother and all the rest. Well,
It beats spending 8 hours in a queue at Home Affairs. Yeah. I'm sorry, any day.
So, and the other thing, yes, exactly. The Home Affairs are overburdened as they are. Now you have all these people trying to sort their marital status out when it's not, it's not necessary. Unfortunately, we are caught between the days when it used to happen automatically, when there was better communication, and this digital identity coming to save us. So my advice is, they're not committing to when it will be implemented. It might be the end of this year. I'd say that's unlikely. Could be beginning of next year. It could be end of next year. So if you do a check, and if your status is wrong, I would certainly
start the process.
Just go to Home Affairs and do it. Yeah.
Here Rocky's saying we've been dealing with the same problem. My dad died in 2009 and then my mom passed in 2023. Her death certificate showed that she was still married. We applied to Home Affairs for an abridged death certificate in 2023 and we are still waiting, and that's 3 years ago. Yeah. Can you not phone them to find your status, asks E. Do you have to go in?
Good luck with that.
I was going to say, I've never even
you might be lucky,
contemplated
but
the thought of phoning in.
It's not. Let's say you can't rely on that.
Okay. To your point, you used to be able to SMS. I remember checking after I got married, doing a test. We did a conversation on air several years ago on a related topic of Home Affairs incorrectly capturing or deliberately choosing to change women's surnames after marriage, even though they had requested to keep their maiden name. And I remember going through this process of doing checks with everybody around the office who had changed their name or had chosen not to change their name, to send that SMS and get an update, etc. And it did work. It did work at the time. But so that's been done away with.
It's been done away. That was one of the discoveries I made when researching the story.
Okay, so you can't send the SMS. You have to go in person and check. And then if it hasn't been amended, you need to start the process of doing it manually yourself. Okay. Oh.
Also, it's quite random at times because my father died at the end of September 2021. 3 weeks before that, one of my best friend's mother died. Her husband's status is currently captured as widowed. It was automatically done, and my mother's wasn't. So it's happening, but you can't rely on it. So that's why you need to check.
Okay, so deep breaths. I hate telling people to go into a Home Affairs office. You avoid it at all costs.
But I'd rather people know than discover too late. And now they've lost a year. The woman at Home Affairs in Caledon said to my mum, this is a very long, complicated process, changing your marital status. Those were her exact words.
Yeah.
She said, check after 6 to 8 months, but often it takes 12 months. And then I said, well, do we get an SMS or some notification like with your passport collection? No, you have to come in and ask.
Oh gosh, you can't even say put it in
once
motion
you're in
and
the
then
process,
wait for a notification.
No. doesn't come.
How frustrating. Okay, I think John might have done an interview with the minister. If it wasn't yesterday, it might have been the day before. I remember him coming in saying he was going to be speaking to Minister Schreiber about the digital transformation and evolution, as they were calling
this is
it.
Part of it.
It is something that they are sort of nailing their colours to the mast on being a key priority. As Roger is saying on the WhatsApp line, could one even trust if an SMS from Home Affairs came through anymore? He says, my SMS comes back divorced, but our divorce never actually went through in his case. So you got the SMS saying it's all sorted when it wasn't. That's alarming. Okay, well, it's a moot point now because you can't, that system no longer exists anymore.
It's defunct. I mean, I've tried it a couple of times before I realized that it's been done away with.
And so someone's immediately picking up on my comment about married surnames. Sorry to break it to you, but even if when you get married and you go and register your marriage and send in those forms, when you fill out that form, there is a box to tick to say, I wish to change my surname or I wish to maintain my maiden name. And do not take it for granted or take it as given that if you checked that you wanted to keep your maiden name, that wish was respected. There is unfortunately a long history of Home Affairs officials taking it upon themselves to morally decide that you were meant to take your husband's surname.
Could not make it up.
And it is still a thing, I'm afraid. I think it is getting better. There has been enough noise made about the fact and enough women protesting that this was done explicitly, against their explicit wishes not to do it, that I think the situation is improving. But we last did an interview about this probably 2 years ago, and we still received an alarming number of messages from recently married women saying that wish had not been respected.
You've taught me something.
So please go and check. Or when you're next in Home Affairs doing a passport renewal or something like that, do ask them to check under which name you are, which surname you are captured, because you might get a shock to find that in fact they have changed your name for you, even if you didn't wish to. I didn't think to check. I opted to change my name. So I work under my maiden name, but in all
Your
other
legal
respects of
name
my
is
life, it's a different
Hudson.
surname. So I never thought to check it either. But it was distressing how many women messaged in the last time we spoke about this. Oh my goodness, says Grant, I've been married thrice and divorced twice. Luckily, I remarried my second wife, so hopefully I'm still married to the right woman.
That's delightful.
That's a twist we didn't see coming. Okay. Antonio asking, what is the impact of not changing your marital status if you're an old pensioner?
Well, so I assume
his words, not mine, by the way.
Yeah,
Okay.
I assume whether he was divorced or widowed, if he's still married, the executive what's the word?
Executor of the will.
Not executive of the will have trouble winding up his estate. So his children will then have to, and it's much harder when you're doing on behalf of someone that's deceased than when it's you doing it on your own behalf. I have a friend going through this right now, which is actually where this story began. In terms of what happens after you die, in terms of your estate, it is vital that you get that changed.
Yeah, okay. So if you are still, obviously your children will be able to say to the executor, even if it says he's married, he was actually widowed,
Doesn't
you
count.
still have to produce the documents
Yes.
to prove that. And as you've just heard, okay, thanks. Sorry, strange email coming in, which I'm just going to ignore. Mary Ann's had a terrible experience with this, saying my wedding invitations were out, everything booked, and then I discovered my husband's divorce had not been registered. That was over a year ago. This is obviously a deceased estate where people's ability to pay their rent and feed themselves, etc., rests on their ability to wind up an estate is the most crucial and sort of life impacting one, but this is another one, and it's not the first time I've heard that.
No, me neither. I must admit, I'd forgotten, or I don't know, when this friend of mine was telling me that she couldn't wind up her mother's estate or have it wound up because she was still listed captured as married and not widowed. That's where this all began, and then I started thinking, well, what about divorces and I had just not picked up any. I hadn't heard people talking about it. And then once I started going down this road, all these stories came
as
out.
happened to us with the surname change thing. So there we go. If nothing else, I hope this has just alerted you to please check. Do not just accept that because you thought Home Affairs knew you were divorced or widowed, they do.
Yeah. Before you plan your wedding, check
yeah.
that either you or whoever's divorced, and that if there is one of you is divorced, just check that Home Affairs understands that and has that captured. Otherwise, you've got potentially a year to 2 years wait before you can actually get married.
You know, and I'm the expense of the wedding and all of that, sure, is one thing, but I'm just thinking of the emotional toll of
massive.
Being ready to want to move on with your life and start afresh, and then be confronted with the fact that in the eyes of Home Affairs, you are still married to your former spouse. You can't imagine. All right, Wendy, thank you so much for alerting us to this issue and for bringing us the news on the Cherry Tego crash results. And again, if you missed that earlier part of the conversation, it will be shared on podcast, as will the Home Affairs bit, on primemediaplus.com and in the Prime Media Plus app. And Wendy Knowler, we'll chat again next week, Wednesday.
Will do. Thanks, Pippa.